Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid. And a lot of talk during spring ball and now fall camp has centered around Ryan Hopkins, and rightfully so. But it's led many people to wonder, what does that mean for our presumed QB1 Colton Joseph? And I think there's two factors at play with the QB narrative so far this season. First, as a freshman, Ryan Hopkins has absolutely nothing to lose. He can go out there, ball out, make plays, and make mistakes. And for this season, it's not going to affect him negatively. But when it comes to Colton Joseph, what makes him special is not something that can really be replicated in a practice setting, at least under the watchful eyes of the media. And of course, that is his mobility, his playmaking ability when the play breaks down. And it is this mobility that is making the fandom nervous. Given Wisconsin's recent history of QB injuries, can we really stomach another QB who's going to put himself in harm's way? And how much should the coaching staff use him as a ball carrier without risking the season? But I think that's the wrong question to ask. The better question is, how can the coaching staff use Colton's mobility without making him the entire focus of the run game? Colton has called his mobility his superpower, and the Badgers should not try to coach it out of him. They should build an offense that uses it as one piece of the puzzle and one more problem that the defense has to account for, creating a +1 on every play. So today, I want to take a look at what Colton's mobility actually looks like inside of the Wisconsin offense, how they can use his legs while protecting him, and why the best way to keep Colton healthy is not to run him less, but to use his ability at the right time and making it difficult for the defense to predict when he is going to use his feet. So that is the focus of today. Let's get into it. All right, so first, let's address a very common myth that comes with mobile QBs, and that is mobile QB equals injury-prone QB. And if you really go out there and look at the data, and I read a study that compared quarterback injuries between 2010 and 2019 in the NFL, and the data really doesn't support the idea that QBs who run more on design QB runs get more injuries. Quarterbacks get injured in the pocket. They get rolled up on, etc. When a mobile running QB takes off on a run, he knows he is a ball carrier. And that gives him the opportunity to know how to protect himself. Now, like many football players, mobile QBs can have a tendency to be reckless. Some can be. But smart QBs know how to use their legs as an extension of the offense as a whole without putting themselves in harm's way. And coming into the season, Colton Joseph has done his part to prepare himself to be a ball carrier, prepared himself to take the play out of the pocket. He's done that by having a very specific injury prevention routine, stretching, mobility, strengthening weak areas like joints, etc. And he put on weight. And this is coming from his own mouth. He knows what he's getting into. And he's been doing it long enough where I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt that he knows how to take care of himself. And then it's on top of that, the coaching staff needs to take that and build an offensive around him that is not going to put him in harm's way. He can run the ball and not be in harm's way. And that's what we need to have. We need to have an offense that complements his skill set and is not dependent on his skill set. So we are going to go into the Dairy Ray classroom now, and we're going to talk about how the Wisconsin offense can take advantage of Colton Joseph's running ability without putting him in harm's way. All right, here we are in the classroom, and like we said in the 13 personnel video, new software here. We're learning together. There's going to be some growing pains, but we're going to get through it. All right, so the first point I want to hit on here is we alluded to it in the intro, and that is the idea of Colton being the complement to the run game and not the entire run game. And that is something that Badger fans should be used to by now, where our run game was focused on one person. And if you could shut him down, the offense was dead. And it didn't happen that often, but it tended to happen against your Ohio States, your Penn States, etc. Having a player like Colton Joseph who can be a complement to your base run scheme, the play that you want to ride your season on, is huge, because it means you can take the same general backfield action and you can run multiple different plays from that same action. And by doing that, the defense has to account for that multiple action. So what do we mean by that? Well, let's take our bread and butter. Good old-fashioned wide zone. Okay? Get a running back going downhill. A quarterback can flip his hips and turn over right there. Just by this action right here, we have so many different options that we can do. Okay? Depending on the blocking scheme, we can read backside end and run a little backdoor where quarterback is turning his back to the defender, and if he turns and chases down the line, that will allow our quarterback to pull it late and come back this way. And it doesn't want to do it. Again, we're learning together. Whatever. Okay? That's one option. We can read front side. Same idea. Defensive end crashes, we keep. Okay? It can just be a bootleg where we're going to get off of the edge here. There we go. There we go. Again, we're learning this together. We can give this same backfield action, and then we can boot and open up play action, etc. Or finally, we can give that same backfield action and we can run RPO in any various way. We can run glance, we can run slants, we can run hitches, we can run screens. It doesn't really matter. So, by giving a standard backfield action, you can multiply that act. You could use the same blocking scheme. Every single one of these plays that we talked about right here can all be run with a wide zone blocking scheme. Okay? Doesn't matter. Okay? Doesn't matter. Same scheme. We can let it run. And again, you could have so many different options build off of one play. And that is how Colton Joseph can positively affect the run game without necessarily getting hit or putting himself in harm's way. You just move the read point. You change the play based off of the backfield action, but you keep the structure the same. And by doing that, the running back is not always going to be the focal point, or Colton Joseph is not always going to be the focal point. By doing that, you put yourself in a less likely scenario where the big hit is going to come at the end of the play. Okay. Another thing that they can do to protect him is just in general making the offense harder to defend by being more diverse. And as we griped about last season, there came a point where the play calling got to be not predictable, but they didn't have a lot to work with, especially with Hunter Simmons and his inability to run the ball, and Carter Smith, his being put in a position where he wasn't ready to take on the entire offense. So, an easy way to protect Colton Joseph is to find ways to get the ball out of his hands. He can still be mobile, but you get him and you use his mobility to set other things up. We were just talking about similar action, and we talked about it in the 13 personnel video as well, where we can give that action, we can set up, and now we can use the fact that Colton Joseph turning his back to the defense, aggressive backfield action, and that sets up various play action. Okay, like we've talked about in the past. And by doing so, defenders' eyes get low, and he's got options both intermediate and deep. By doing so, you're forcing the defense to defend the entire field. By doing that, you take eyes off of the QB. This is not rocket science. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but in actuality, it is that simple. But to do that, we have to break away from the tendencies that we had last season, where at times the run game was wide zone and QB power, and that's about it. The passing game, as we've lamented many times, screens, play action, roll bootlegs into nothing, and chuck and duck. By adding the intermediate passing game, building more layers to the passing game, which we're seeing so far. We're seeing a lot more crossing routes, a lot more curls built onto those crossing routes, and we're seeing more backfield actions, either play action with straight drops or RPO actions that, again, create linebacker hesitation, creates easier completions, and by getting the ball out of Colton Joseph's hand faster in situations where we don't need him to break the pocket, it's just a simple way of protecting your quarterback. But I think it is important in all of this talk that we understand a very basic idea. And that is, we need to let Colton be Colton. You brought him here based on a skill set that everybody is aware of. You didn't bring him here to change what he can do. You brought him here because you thought his abilities could elevate the offense. So do not try to coach out his best assets. What we can do is we can work on things like decision making and getting better at maximizing the right opportunities to be athletic and knowing when to tuck it and when to chuck it. Getting out of the pocket, you see a big lane, you run, you go get it. You can get me 8 yards on a bootleg, running the ball, get it, get down. Okay? If you need to escape, or it is a design run and you can get clean yards, get down when you need to. Okay? If nothing is there, avoid unnecessary contact. Don't manufacture contact. Okay? I have this problem right now. I have a wide receiver playing quarterback, and he is one of the best athletes I've ever seen. But he tries too hard. And we've seen that in the past. We saw that a little bit with Carter Smith a couple times last year, where maybe we're trying too hard. Okay? And so knowing when the play is over, knowing when we've gotten the yards that we need, knowing when it's time to move on to the next down, and knowing that this is the Big Ten and not the Sun Belt is going to be important for him to grow. And by doing it, we can have him still be himself, but become the best version of himself. And that's important. And I think the Wisconsin offense has the foundation that they know how to use a mobile athletic quarterback like Colton Joseph. That's why they brought him in, right? Okay. We have plays in this offense that showed success. Okay. A lot of people really dogged on Danny O'Neal last year. First thing, I thought he should have never been benched. I think that came from above. I think that came from the head coach, and I think Jeff Grimes should have stuck to his guns and stuck with Danny O'Neal before he got injured. Okay, and he got injured getting tackled on the sideline. Okay, the offense that we ran with Danny, that can be built around and expanded with the fact that Colton Joseph's got a stronger arm, he's faster, etc. There's some that foundation is there. And we're just going to take a second to talk about some of the foundational plays in the run game that involve the QB and how we could take advantage of it with Colton Joseph. So obviously the first one we saw a lot of last year was your variations of QB power / inverted veer. Okay, so backfield action, running back working vertical or horizontally to the line of scrimmage. Blocking wise, we're running power. So we're going to work double down. We're going to work down. And we're going to work pull to the linebacker. We're going to read here. Likely we're going to arc release here to try to get this defender to follow. And then work to wall off. Backside, we're going to cut off. And we're going to read right here. So this is the general idea of a QB power. Again, the animation isn't perfect, but you get the idea. Okay. So QB power. This doesn't, QB power inverted veer. We're reading right here. That doesn't need to be taken out. I prefer them to run more inverted veer and less just straight up power. But it's there. Obviously, we can run speed option. Okay? QB running back just getting out wide. Okay? And blocking scheme-wise, you can change things up. You can run inside zone scheme. You can run power scheme. There's a lot of variations blocking scheme-wise, but we're going to read this first end man on the line of scrimmage, and we want to get the ball out in space. Depending on how the defense adjusts, this is going to be a quick get the ball out there and go. You get a good blocking receiver in here who can wall off this linebacker, then this becomes a second and third level play. Okay, we didn't use it a lot, but I think it's something that we need to use more, and it's going to work really well, especially you get a scat back type running back in here, or a guy who can really get to the edge like Darian Dupree. I think that would work well. Okay. We did. Obviously, a lot of bootlegs off of the wide zone action. Okay. And depending on scheme, we would get a lot of that didn't work. Boom. Hey, we would get, no, go back to where you are. Again, we're learning this together, right, people? Get wide zone action with, a lot of times we would get a guard to pull and lead out. It don't want to work, but you know what I mean. Okay? Boom, boom, boom. QB get out of the pocket. Problems we had is these routes would take forever to develop. And if we had any kind of press coverage, we couldn't get off there. So we're hoping that's going to be worked on. But for the sake of argument, we're going to assume that Audi Confessor has gotten these guys doing what they're supposed to. Okay, so we can run the deep curl. We can run a flat. We can run a crosser. Okay, and we get options. Now, the fact that Colton Joseph is going to give us a more serious run threat than we had with Hunter Simmons for sure, and with Carter Smith, his problems were more he didn't want to pull the trigger on throwing the ball and he would take it too wide. I think Colton Joseph is a little bit in the middle. The fact that he's going to be able to get wide fast is going to give him time for this to develop. But then the defenders have to have a flat defender whose eyes are going to be focused on the QB. And they have to contain him. By containing him, whoever the flat defender would be, whether it be the inside linebacker, the corner, whatever, that is going to give an easier trigger for this than we had with our other quarterbacks last year. And then Colton has got the ability to take it wider and to take it faster to let these have more time to develop. We want to get out, that linebacker goes. We want to throw the ball to the tight end, etc. So that is another idea of what we can do here. And we'll just get this to reset. Thank you. Okay. Another thing, talked about it a little bit with the previous section. We're just kind of different ways to run the same action, different plays. RPO. Okay. Lot more RPO. Okay, if you're worried about Colton Joseph running the ball, then you move the read to the second and third level, and you let his playmaking ability as a runner hold defenders to create space in the RPO game. Okay, you give an action here. You give a tight end up the seam, and now you create conflict for linebackers. Depending on the backfield action, we're working to get the linebacker overflow, as has always kind of been an important thing with the wide zone. That creates space in behind for kind of glance route or a seam route. And the fact that we are getting blocking action one way is going to create downhill flow. We get the ball up and over the top. By doing this, by running more RPO action, the easiest way to stop RPOs is to just play straight up man-to-man coverage. And that's exactly what we want with a mobile QB, because you cannot lock in on all your receivers and let him run. If you do that, he's going to take off before you know he's gone. And RPOs is a great way to influence how the defense runs coverage. And by influencing how the defense runs coverage, you can manipulate him in the run game. It works together. Okay? And then the final thing is, again, not a shocker, but using motions and shifts to put ourselves in position that if he does keep the ball, he's going to have either a secondary option to get rid of the football or an extra blocker. For example, we were talking about the backdoor read, the flop read. Okay, again, blocking scheme doesn't matter, but what we can do here, We could put our Z receiver in motion, almost run like split field, split zone, and then post snap, we can put him in the flat. QB runs his action. If the defensive end decides to crash, he can pull, he can work out here. And then if we get second level coming downhill the field, because again, they're going to have somebody spying on the QB. Now you give options. So again, if we have defensive end crashing, it's a little low. Let's get him a little high, get him a little more in there. Okay. Then again, it doesn't matter what the blocking scheme is. You can run inside zone, you can run wide zone, same action. And we get the ball out in space. So we use that motion, be a little quicker. You get the idea. Boom. Okay, you got options. If he comes downhill here, we pitch it out here. If he widens with the motion, we got a lane to run the ball in. So building off of something, a basic scheme, adding a motion, adds that many more layers. And again, it takes the eyes off of Colton Joseph. Or even better, their eyes are still on him, and it creates space and it creates opportunities for more players and more of his teammates to get involved in the offense. All right, so next up, and what we're going to wrap things up here, is what can we add to the run game that can, again, take advantage of his skill set, maybe keep him as protected as we can, but are natural complements to what we're already doing, and that we can take this offense to the next level. All right, first up here, this is actually something that we ran last season. In fact, like I talked about, if you watched my latest appearance on Locked On Badgers, I talked about this play. Very similar setup here to the first play that we ran against Illinois last year. And that is the idea of running a bash concept off of jet sweep. Okay, so, and that is too high. Let's get it more in front of the QB. Boom. Okay, so jet sweep. Okay, backfield action can be the same. And in fact, I just realized they were in sidecar when they did this. So backfield action is here. Okay? The read is going to be here. Okay? But what we are going to be doing is, by the backfield action, we are actually going to run a bash. Okay? And a bash means back away, and the blocks are for the QB. So in this particular case, what we can get is we can get either wide zone or outside zone, whatever, here on the, essentially is the back side of the formation. And then what we can do is we can run the tight end and the running back and the receiver on what is now the read side. So we're going to read this defensive end right here. If he stands still, as long as he's not moving straight sideways, we're going to hand the ball off here. And again, this is exactly what we did. This was Tretch last year, first play against Illinois. Hand it off, he gets outside. Okay? But there were many examples last year where they ran this bash kind of concept where if you had a QB who was a little bit more inclined to pull the trigger, he probably would have done it. And you don't have to full out sell out and run everybody here. Depending on the defensive lineman, of course, you could end up having the tackle get involved in this. But the general concept is the same. You get the ball carrier out in space, you give him some blockers, and everyone else is helping the QB. So if he keeps it, he's going to have a caravan out here in front of him, and it is going to lead him downfield. Let's see if this looks a little better this time compared to last time. Boom, jet sweep, and then we can keep the ball. Again, you get the general idea. So build off of something that we did last year. There's a lot of different bash concepts that you can run. And you can run any kind of backfield action and then have the blocking being out there in front of the QB. The QB doesn't always have to be in a naked situation where he is just going to run out in space with no blockers. Give him the blockers and design the runs to give him blockers, but still keep a read component that if there's a crash or if there's a look that we like, he can still hand the ball off. Find the free yards where they are available. Another thing that I think could help him in the run game a little bit more is to have a little bit more downhill action to the offense. So I love wide zone. Okay, I love outside zone. I love toss. I like forcing the defense to work downhill outside. But what I also love is a well drawn up and ran inside zone play where we're working double teams and we're working on moving defenders to the second level and we're working on picking up blocks. And while the running back can be your downhill component, your side-to-side component can be the QB. And by doing so, well, we're just going to see how it sets up. So if I run a one inside zone here, always love trying to run inside zone to a one-tack defensive tackle. Okay, backfield action, come across the midline, working A-gap to A-gap, your typical inside zone. We're going to work double team to the backer, double team to the backer. We could work double team here depending on where he is, but we'll likely just single block here and work to the second level. Backside here, we can run anything with this backside tight end and 12 personnel. But it could be anything out here. Put him in the flat. Give this QB some kind of option. Again, we're getting north-south with the offensive line and the running back, and then the QB creates the horizontal threat. And by doing so, you're not going to get backside flow. They're not going to. They're going to be a lot more hesitant. They're going to work on contain a lot more, and that's going to create cutback lanes, which is another important component of downhill running. Is you got to have cutback lanes. Inside zone gives you a lot more than gap scheme does. So simple things like that, adjusting the scheme, doing a little bit more, just getting downhill, getting nasty, double team, and inside zone run duo, whatever you want to do, get more downhill with the blocking scheme. And then finally, and we don't really necessarily have to be in the classroom for this, but we'll stay here for now, it is use multiple backs and use multiple backs with different blocking or different skill sets. And by doing that, what Colton adds to the play is in different contrast to that ball carrier. And what I mean by that, if you got Darian Dupree, who is going to be your speed, get to the sideline type of guy, him and a Nate Palmer type, Juju Pope, guys who can just bust it outside, let Colton be that little more downhill guy. You get your downhill guys like Agusama and Brian Jackson. Let Colton be that sideline to sideline guy. Give different compliments and build the offense around it, instead of running backs between the tackles, QB works to the outside. Just build upon it. And use the advantage that you have running backs with different skill sets. This is why in modern football, I'm not necessarily for the bell cow. Okay, there could be a bell cow of the day where this defense cannot figure out what we do when Abu Sama's in the game, or when Brian Jackson, or Juju Pope, or Nate Palmer. Doesn't matter who, Darian Dupree. Okay, be a bell cow of the day, not have to be the bell cow for the season. By doing that, defenses have to account for not only the playmaking ability at the quarterback position, but now, well, what running backs in? What are they going to do differently? You're just adding more questions to the defense without giving them more answers. So we can have a mobile QB. We can have a QB who can be a focal point of the offense, but he doesn't have to have the entire run game centered around him. And just because he's a mobile QB does not mean we need to be scared as Badger fans and worried that what's going to happen when he takes off. We just got to trust he's going to take off and he's going to know what he's doing when he gets there. All right. I think with that, we are going to call it a day on the QB run game. I think it's going to be an important component of the offense. And we got quarterbacks who can do it. Just let them do it. All right. That'll be it for today. Not quite sure what we're going to do next time for our scheme preview. We're going to think of something. Probably passing related, right? We haven't done much passing yet. We'll see what happens. Thank you as always for watching, and we'll see you next time.